Hi and welcome to another video from the CTAD Clinic. My name's Dr. Mike Lloyd and I'm the clinic director. So in today's video I'm going to be drawing a couple of things together that are going on at the moment. So the first is my current situation with health. Obviously I've been diagnosed with prostate cancer. So that's given me a sense of something bad happening and not straight away, like it's there, but it's not something I can do anything with about at the moment. I have to wait and other people are going to be really important in my life in terms of treatment plans. But I'm kind of in this situation where I've got this event taking place and there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm slightly paralyzed in terms of action. So that's the first event. The second is being inspired by a couple of patients that have used novels and music to really try and assist with describing how they feel about things, either from the past or from the present. And this has really kind of given me a new flavour, I suppose, of sort of novels and the meaning that they might have for people with certain conditions such as complex trauma. And there's a book that I've been reading recently, I've just come to the end of, and there was a beautiful paragraph that I wanted to bring into this video just to read through to sort of give us a sense of what we're talking about in this video, which is going to be about survival mode, which is something that's really important for us all to have, and it's great and it's absolutely brilliant. But it can go wrong, and when it goes wrong, it can create an enormous amounts of long-term problems that we have to become accustomed to unless we do something about it. So I'll start by reading the excerpt from the book, and the book is a series of short stories called The Cursed Bunny. It's a fantastic book. I'd highly recommend it. It's very, very weird and very strange, but a beautifully written book. And the paragraph runs as this. I had no hope anymore for good times, but I didn't want to wish for bad times either. I was waiting for something but didn't know what to hope for. There was no future. All of our survival skills were trapped in the past. For some people, their lives are ruled by one shocking event reverberating through their survival instincts. Life shrinks into a trap made up of a shimmering moment in the past, a trap where they endlessly repeat that singular moment when they were surest of being alive. And this is really describing what we might call as sort of simple or single event trauma, where that one big thing happens which has a fundamental effect. It makes the survival instinct kick in. So that's when we go into survival mode. And survival mode is like thinking about that sort of fight, flight, freeze type moment where everything becomes highly focused on just getting through that event. So whether it's like a house on fire or a car crash or an assault or something, it's where everything is honed into that moment. Everything else disappears off into the background. All the things that you might be thinking about completely disappear, and it's all about how to survive that moment. And the brain is designed for this. Now, some people have those moments, they go on to develop PTSD, and some people don't. It's entirely individual. But what's happening, and regardless of whether PTSD ends up taking place, getting through that moment and surviving that moment is all that matters. So regardless of what the situation is, survival mode takes place where everything focuses in. The goal is to get through that moment and out the other side, and ideally sort of relief and freedom, and life returns to normal. But we know that it doesn't really return to normal because we are fundamentally changed by the nature of that event. It really has a sort of profound effect on so much of our understanding of ourselves and understanding about safety in the world. Now, my situation is that suddenly I've been given this condition and now I've got to deal with it, but I can't. It's invisible. There's nothing I can do. I can't act. I can't really protect myself from it. It's an inside thing. I have to wait. So what I have now is some anxiety and some dread and some apprehension and some fear and some worry and questions and a whole ton of different emotions that are flying around that I'm waiting to be able to do something. Now, I'm sure when I go into surgery, which it looks like I'm going to have, my survival mode will kick in and I'll just go into how do I get through this? What do I need to do to get out the other side in as good shape as possible? And I'll do that. So my survival mode will kick in about a month's time, let's say. But it's not now. So at the moment, I'm just waiting to see. Because my survival mode is sort of working, but I've got nothing to survive against because I'm not actually in any threat that's taking place in the moment. So in a way, I'm being tricked into thinking that there's a threat, because there is, but the threat is invisible and it's not really happening now. But my system is kind of gearing up in preparation for this event that's going to take place. So my survival mode has been started, but there's nothing I can really do. Now, for a lot of other people, and realistically, this is what the book is saying, is that the survival event is well in the past and people get stuck there. And it's like, that's the point where some people, like, everything is honed in and everything is focused. And then the brain gets really used to that and deals with that. And that can be wonderful and you can get out the other side in one piece. With complex trauma, though, the events take place time and time and time again over a period of weeks and months and years. And especially problematic is if the survival mode is triggered in very early childhood or infancy, where the nature of the things that are happening to that infant or child are so terrible that survival mode is kicked in, but it doesn't really stop because it takes place over and over again, which is what the complex trauma is. So a child in an abusive setting is almost constantly in survival mode. Each day is a case of getting through this in one piece, and then the knowledge also that the next day is going to have more and the next day is going to have more. And there's no real sense of when I can get out of this. So the survival mode comes in and it almost acts like a plateau that child then learns to live on. So every day becomes survival mode, which then becomes the default setting. The brain gets organized around living with survival mode in place and active all the time. And that then becomes the development of the child's psychology. So the child then develops through life with survival mode, almost a permanent and constant factor in their lives, because there's no sense of when the survival mode is going to need to stop, because it doesn't look like it is going to stop, because the child has no power or influence to get out of it. Now, as an adult, you might say, let's say a house on fire is a survival mode event, but you know, once you're out of the house, that survival mode can then stop. And then, we then can then come down and then deal with the consequences afterwards. Sure, those are difficult, but those aren't survival mode type things. It's about how to reorganize your house insurance, get a place to stay, all the various different things, what's happened with your possessions. That's a whole different sort of frame of being. So with a child in an abusive setting within the home, the survival mode is on a plateau. It takes place over weeks and months and years, and there's no real end to it. So the brain then becomes survival mode. And that's kind of okay, because dissociation might be the thing that allows that child to survive, being able to separate, compartmentalize the different experiences, locate the trauma in different parts to allow them to be held. But when the abusive environment changes and that child then becomes safe, let's say when they're in late teenage or adult, and they move away from that environment, they get out of it and the abuse stops, the brain just doesn't necessarily just click out of survival mode, because that's never been a part of its functioning. It's kind of got into survival mode and stayed there. So it's not really good at clicking out of it, because it's never had to do that before, because it's never been safe to do it. So the body and the brain are still in survival mode, even when the environment has fundamentally changed and the person may well be safe. They're surrounded by better people, the abuse has stopped, the neglect has stopped, whatever it might be, but the brain doesn't really acknowledge that as a fact. Now, it will for some people, and that's great, but I would suspect that people with dissociative conditions are much less likely to drop out of survival mode, because the dissociative nature is about keeping things present and keeping things as stable as possible within a dissociative framework. So the dissociation might actually stop the person from being able to drop out of survival mode into safe mode, and they may never really have a conceptualization of what safe mode is. And this makes the problem of survival mode really, really apparent, is that you can get into it very easily, but getting out of it is very difficult. And the longer you stay in it, the harder it seems to come out of it. And I think this is why so many of the people that we know with dissociative conditions describe everyday life as being anxious, as being fearful, a sense of apprehension, a sense of just waiting and worrying about the next bad thing to happen. It's almost like they're constantly in the place where I'm at the moment, of knowing that something's going to happen, but not knowing what it is. Now, at least I know that in a certain amount of weeks and months, I know what's going to be taking place, and I can kind of prepare for that and then hopefully come out of it at the other end. But if you don't actually know what the event is, but you feel certain that something is going to happen because that's what life was like on the plateau, then the survival mode remains in place because you're waiting for the bad thing to happen. And even if it isn't happening, it doesn't mean you become safe or feel safe. And I think this can lead to chronic anxiety. It can lead to chronic fatigue. It's just exhausting being in survival mode all the time because we're not designed to do it. And things can wear out and we can become ill, we can become sick, we can become tired, our immune system can be compromised, our general health can be compromised, because survival mode is an exhausting state to be in, because it's all about high energy. It's about dealing with something in an acute setting that's not designed for chronic settings. And when we are in a chronic setting like long-term abuse or complex trauma, the body gets used to that and the body doesn't know how to drop out of it. So it lasts for years and years and years, even when the abusive environment has changed. And this means the person effectively gets stuck in survival mode, which makes everything quite fearful and quite anxiety provoking. And I think that's what's being described so much by our patients. And it's really interesting to at least, I think, acknowledge and notice that this is what I'm in, because I think if we're able to say, I'm in survival mode, that's why I'm tired, that's why I'm exhausted, that's why I'm anxious, because my brain and body are gearing up for something, waiting for this bad thing to happen. But I know in my life and my friendships and my resources around me that that bad thing is not predictable. Sure, any bad thing could happen, like a car accident or falling down a flight of stairs, for example, but it's not predictable. And being able to say with some degree of certainty that life actually doesn't need survival mode all the time, I just want it in the background as and when I actually need it. That is something that therapeutically we work towards. It's trying to help a person notice a safe environment, start becoming accustomed to it, but essentially training the traumatized brain to listen to safety, to notice, acknowledge and be aware of safety, and start getting used to and working towards moving out of survival mode. Not permanently, because it's always a good thing to keep in the background, but to not have it as a day-to-day function of life is really a massive goal for a lot of people. Dissociation makes it tough, so helping with dissociation ideally can move a person towards coming out of survival mode into safe mode, which is an awful lot better place to be in terms of just general life, health, and the sort of the enjoyment of, whatever it is that's going on in your life. So I hope that that's been a sort of a helpful wander into the territory of survival mode. It's such a powerful response. We've all got it built into the brain. We hope never to use it, and we hope if we do need to use it, it starts and stops quickly enough. So as soon as the event is over, we're out and we're relieved and we're okay and we can move on and kind of dust ourselves down. But when survival mode takes place over many, many years, the brain gets stuck there and it has to be trained to come out. And that's really what therapy should be designed to do for people with complex trauma. So I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts in the comments at the end of the video. As always, I really enjoy looking through those, so please do keep the comments coming. Please do subscribe, and one thing I've been sort of reminding about is to sort of click on the notifications button so that you're aware when new videos drop, because over the next few months or so I am going to be continuing to put videos onto the channel. Even though I'm going through my period of sort of treatment and recovery, I still want to drop videos, but they might be a little bit more random, so please do check the notifications button so that you're aware of those as and when they come in. And and in between now and the next video, please do take great care.